chime in.
So that's when you're going to bring up Michael A. Taylor?
That's when Michael A. Taylor comes in. I mean, the corner outfield market is active.
A robust market.
All right, welcome to the first episode of The Inside Scoop. I'm with Michael Marino, Jack Azoulay-Haron. I am Jake Sirkus, the producer and host for The Inside Scoop. Boys, how we doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Living the dream. Jack?
Yep, doing great. Excited to get in some of these, hard-hitting rumors and whatnot. All good on my end.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk today about a couple big-time players. One of them free agent, one of them pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays that may or may not get moved in the next couple of days. We're gonna start with the prize free agent left on the free agent market, stud Japanese pitcher Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So lots of big-time teams are interested in him. There's the Dodgers, there's the Giants, there's the Yankees, there's the Mets. Pretty much any team that has a big-time budget that can use an extra starter is interested in this guy. And the reports recently have been the Yankees and the Mets. Those are the teams that are up front. Those are the teams that are leading the race. Don't forget about the Dodgers for obvious reasons. Just got Shohei, was part of the whole recruitment process. Mike, I'll start with you. You tweeted a couple days ago that this is a market that probably you wouldn't be surprised to see solved 5, 6, 7 days from now. Not really a thing that's going to happen immediately because there's still a lot of pieces left. I believe he took a visit with Philadelphia today, met with one of their guys. So kind of what's the structure of his market looking like right now on December 14th?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm putting a timeline on this thing, I'm going to say probably about a week. Right before Christmas is kind of the sweet spot there. Now, here's kind of what I'll tell you about his market. You've got teams, you got Philly, you have the Red Sox, you have the Giants that are kind of like quietly lurking around here. And it's not, you haven't heard any of those three kind of rumored as serious targets, but they're in the mix and they're meeting with him and they kind of want to see what's going on there. Obviously, then you have those three teams, the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees, who kind of are in a tier of their own. They're considered to be more serious. What I'll tell you there is this. The Dodgers are very interested. This isn't some fake interest just to show interest to drive the market up. They need a starter. Look at their rotation. You will see why they need a starter. I have some doubts myself about their financial willingness on Yamamoto. What I'll tell you is, unlike Shohei Ohtani, I don't think he's looking to defer 95% of his contract. This is a 25-year-old who's looking to cash in the MLB. And, this guy's going to make probably $300+ million is what the market is looking like. And that's before posting fee. From what I've heard, the Mets are more worried about the Yankees than the Dodgers at this point. Obviously, the Dodgers have this star-studded recruiting pitch. Once you bring out, Betts and Ohtani and Freddie Freeman, I mean, that sells itself alone. But I think the money is going to be the driving factor here. And that's something that Steve Cohen obviously can take care of. But he's working against, what's said to be important in his mind, which is the rich history of the organizations of the Dodgers and the Yankees. Now, money talks, we'll see where this progresses. But, I think, in my opinion, and kind of from what I'm hearing, I think the Mets and the Yankees are 1-2 in some order. It's unclear as to kind of who's on top there. And the Dodgers are not far behind. I think once we start talking about something that starts with a 3, I think the Dodgers might kind of second guess it here. But they're still players nonetheless, and I expect them to be interested from start to finish.
Jack?
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. Pretty much everything, that Mike said, I'm, under the impression is most definitely accurate. And, in addition, I think the Yankees in particular like where they're positioned. My understanding is, as Mike said, it comes down to money versus rich history. But I think, the money gap may not be quite as large as people are kind of thinking here. The Yankees love this guy. The Yankees may very well come down to a bidding war between Hal Steinbrenner and Steve Cohen. And I think that, I am also under the impression that this will end up with a contract in the $300 million. And, I think the Yankees are more than willing to give that out, as are the Mets. And again, the Dodgers less so. I could see it, but definitely not quite as confident in them, relative to the Mets and the Yankees in that regard.
So let's kind of zoom out a little bit, and there's a lot of people are talking about this pitcher, and he is probably going to be one of the most well-known players in Major League Baseball by the time he throws his first pitch in the big leagues, which is astonishing. And going back to the middle of last season, the rumors, when the Mets started to sell off their big starting pieces, Verlander, Scherzer, it was like, okay, are they going to go after this Japanese pitcher, Yamamoto, who not really anybody had heard anything about? And it kind of always felt like the Mets were going to lead the race into December and into January whenever the market would kind of hit top gear. But what are these teams so interested in with this pitcher? Why is he different than any other Japanese player to come out of that country in the last 20 years outside of Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, I think I can speak on this a bit from an analytical perspective. This guy's stuff, is as good as the top pitchers in the game. This is a guy you could argue will come in and immediately be a top 3 to 5 pitcher in the sport. He showcased it during the WBC. He's won three consecutive Cy Young awards, the Sawamura Award in Japan. So this is a guy that MLB teams, especially the Yankees, Mets, and Dodgers, they view this guy as a top 5 pitcher. And these are very, analytical and numbers-based organizations regarding pitching. And obviously that's kind of the direction that pitching is taking. So I think, while this seems very unprecedented, I am not too surprised at all, just kind of looking at, his pitch variety. He throws a number of different pitches. His splitter is disgusting. His fastball comes in a really good release slot, and he's a very unorthodox arm angle and kind of windup. If you notice, he's kind of switched to more of the stretch relative to the full windup that we're used to from him. So I think teams are really banking on his stuff, really just translating over. And I think that, frankly, it probably will. This is a very big investment that many teams are looking to make. And there's a clear reason, and I would say it resides with the stuff that he has.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. Here's what I'll tell you. Like, Eno Sarris had a great piece on The Athletic kind of about this. And one of the big differences, and you heard Kodai Senga when he came to the United States talking about the difference between Major League Baseball and baseball in Japan, was the baseball. And they use pre-tacked baseballs in Japan. I think the actual specifications of the ball are also different. So that was a huge adjustment for him. Now, what these MLB clubs have at their disposal is pitch data from the World Baseball Classic, and those are baseballs that are not pre-tacked. What Eno said was, if you look at all of his pitches, nearly every pitch would be elite in terms of spin. He would have the number 1 splitter. I think it was like 90 something percentile fastball spin. So you're talking about a guy who, from the second he enters the league, in terms of how he can spin the ball, is in the upper elite tier of the game. So that's what these teams, and I talked to one team who's in the mix here who said their model projects him as potentially a top 5 pitcher in baseball. And so that's why this is so enticing. They're talking about Garrett Cole numbers. Heyman said today he wouldn't be shocked if he breaks the year's record for a pitcher. This is a 25-year-old. We really don't see 25-year-olds hit the market at this caliber. And, the idea of kind of getting a starting pitcher who has ace potential for 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, he's 35, that's what is driving his market up. And I'll add to something that Jack said earlier. He said that the Yankees feel well-positioned. Something I heard today is the Mets feel well-positioned. And that kind of tells you how these teams, they don't really know. And they're letting Yamamoto kind of determine the pace of the market here. But none of these teams kind of have a clear picture of, hey, we think we're in front. Usually when multiple teams think that means none of them are. And so they're going to let Yamamoto, who's now met with both clubs and the Dodgers and a lot of other organizations, like has been reported, they're going to let him kind of navigate this. What I presume will happen is he will tell his agent, Joel Wolf, hey, there's 2, 3, 4 teams that I really like. I want you to work with these 3 or 4 teams, and I want you to kind of get the most money from those 3 to 4 clubs, and I'm going to pick my favorite out of all those options. And so that's where I kind of see this headed, but definitely some indecision, I think, in the next week. we'll get some clarity there as to what's going on with him.
I kind of want to go back to the market a little bit. And when you look at the three big clubs that are probably would be considered the favorites, that'd be fair: Yankees, Mets, and Dodgers. Two of those teams expect to play for the World Series this year. Obviously, we haven't really gotten that over the last 10, 15 years, but especially this year, those two teams expect to play in the World Series this year. The Mets, not so much. Do you think there's any reluctancy for Yamamoto to maybe pass on a similar offer for the Mets, or so maybe the Mets might feel like they're playing from behind because of the two teams that they're up against?
Yeah, I mean, kind of obviously knowing Mets people here, like I think they really focused on, my impression from their meeting was showing what their vision is, right? Because it's pretty clear they're not trying to put together a World Series roster this upcoming season. This is a more long-term plan. And what they're trying to sell to him is, hey, if you're here 10 years, that first year might be rough, but let me tell you, those 9 years, we have the money to back it, and we have a strategic plan in place to get you a World Series. And that, they're trying to sell that vision. Obviously, when you're talking about the Yankees and the Dodgers, it's less of a sales pitch, but both teams do have something to sell here, right? The Yankees haven't won a World Series in more than 10 years. And the Dodgers won one in 2020, asterisk, but question mark, World Series. But, both of these teams have something to sell. I would say the Dodgers, the least of the three, obviously now having added Shohei Ohtani. But now, the question is, do they have the money? And they do have it, but will they want to use the money to match, this New York bidding war? And so all three teams kind of have to sell themselves in some way. The Mets probably have the biggest uphill battle, and Steve Cohen, plans to use his cash to solve that. And so we'll see where it goes.
Do you have any other comments about Yamamoto?
I think pretty much we've already summed it up. This is a guy that is highly coveted by every organization, and every organization that can even come close to affording him has had some level of interest. So pretty unprecedented for someone coming over from NPB, but he is an unprecedented type of talent and his age.
All right, so Tyler Glasnow, when healthy, can be one of the filthiest pitchers there is in the game of baseball. Jack, you reported this the other night. You got credit all over for it. You were on it about the Dodgers not being close, working on a potential trade to get Tyler Glasnow and Manuel Margot for Johnny DeLuca and Ryan Pepio. So how did this come about? How did this happen? Where are we at right now on Thursday night?
Yeah, great question. So I can say, just about 10 minutes ago, John Heyman confirmed my report, mine and my friend Bruce's report about this trade potentially coming to fruition. And my understanding is this is a very good chance this is going to happen. Still working through some financial, things regarding the trade, as well as a potential extension for Tyler Glasnow, which is something I mentioned on Fireside Yankees earlier today. The Dodgers really like Glasnow's stuff. And, obviously the caveat with him is he can't stay healthy. He's maybe good for 100 innings, but those 100 innings are going to be some of the best in baseball. So do I expect this trade to go through? I do. I think at this point, all signs are pointing towards that direction. And this is an advanced stage. And as of Tuesday night, as I reported, the framework of this deal is going to revolve around two prospects from the Dodgers to the Rays, and Ryan Pepio and Johnny DeLuca. And I think Pepio is the main prize here. This is a guy that, similar to Glasnow, has some injury concerns, but when the stuff is right and everything is going, how it should with a guy like him, his stuff is top notch. Another type of pitcher that the Rays are going to be banking on that upside for. And the Dodgers, again, a lot of upside here with Glasnow, and he's on a 1-year deal, so that extension is certainly looming. But again, this is kind of the guarantee from the beginning of the offseason. One of the first things I heard was that Tyler Glasnow will be traded. There was no if, and, or but about it. It was a guarantee that he would be traded. So I would say that's where things are going. I do believe that the Dodgers will end up with Glasnow, and I do believe that the Rays, are going to end up with a package surrounding Johnny DeLuca and Ryan Pepio. My opinion is, this is a good trade for both sides. Obviously, this had to happen, and for Tampa, and a guy like Glasnow is, a premier pitcher when he could be healthy. So maybe the Dodgers will work on, new training regimen with a guy like him, to help prolong his arm health throughout the season. But yeah, I mean, that's where things stand at the moment.
Yeah, and Glasnow quietly made 21 starts last year. He missed the first 2 months, came back right before June, and was healthy, if I'm not mistaken, the rest of the season, pitched in a playoff game. Numbers were not necessarily Tyler Glasnow-esque, but when you add the most volume he's ever had, I think the ERA was in the 3.4s. Obviously, really high strikeout numbers. When 125 innings for him, that's the key number. It was the most he's thrown in his entire career. And I don't think it's even close. I think he's eclipsed 100 one other time, and he's been in the majors since 2016, 2017. So, Michael, kind of looking at this from Tampa's perspective, Shane McClanahan is going to miss the entire season in 2024. They have Zach Eflin under contract for 2 more years. We expect them to not have Tyler Glasnow. Where do they go from here? Do we expect to see a Mason Montgomery make the opening day roster? This is a team that has won a crap ton of games the last 3 seasons in the regular season, have not had some postseason success, but have been a factory in the baseball world for running on half a decade now. And they've done it with pitching, and it doesn't really look like they have that this year.
No, I mean, in the proposed deal that Jack, has discussed, they would get back Ryan Pepio, and that's a huge piece of their rotation for years to come. Now, here, something I wanted to touch on in this proposed deal, talking to people around the league, the physicals are going to matter here. And when you're talking about guys like Pepio and Glasnow that have, kind of a injury riddled history, there's no guarantees that these guys check out. Look no further than like Carlos Correa last year, who failed 1 million physicals. These things happen. And so, if there was any part of this trade that ended up changing, my guess is it's likely because of those physicals. Now, here's what I'll talk about, Tampa. The price tag on Glasnow of $25 million, that's what's making it tricky for Tampa. And what you've heard, everything from Tampa is like, they can't afford him. And you understand kind of their financial situation. It's not really shocking knowing their history. They do it every year, right? It's like everyone counts them out. They traded Snell. What are they doing? Their rotation's going to look terrible. And yet they win 90-something games every year. And these guys you've never heard of come up and they just tear it up. Judging based off their past history, my guess is nothing changes with them. Nothing.
I think you take out the 2 best pitchers on their roster. I mean, because look, we've seen this with them before. I mean, guys like Zach Thompson and obviously Shane McClanahan kind of came out of nowhere, but immediately turned into one of the filthiest guys on the planet. But they've won a lot of games and have been solid in the playoffs the last 3 years. It's been a lot because of McClanahan and Glasnow, and those guys aren't going to be there next year.
No doubt. I mean, this is something and I'll ask Jack here. Randy Arozarena, is this a guy that you expect will be traded? Do you think he might be traded? They're fielding interest. What's your information there?
Yeah, so regarding Arozarena, again, this guy is a top flight type of talent, something that, a lot of people didn't expect him to be available, but, my understanding is he is available. Now, do I think it's a guarantee he gets traded? No. I think Glasnow was a guarantee. I think Arozarena is not a guarantee, but, they have certainly talked with teams. They did speak to the Mariners a bit. I'm not really sure where those conversations went. And I know of at least 3 other teams that have a certain level of interest. So I think, it would be particularly interesting to see how that plays out, especially, regarding someone with this talent and with so much control left. A lot of people are surprised. He has 3 years of team control. Why would they like to trade him? And to be honest, I'm almost as confused as they are for those people who say that. But again, my understanding is, he is available and he may very well be traded. I'm not really sure what a package would look like surrounding Arozarena, but I know there is certainly interest around the league, and the Rays are definitely not going to, he's not untouchable at all.
Could it be kind of a situation where it's one of those guys that if he is on the market, it's one of those things where nobody knows why, but the price tag is just way too high? I mean, this is a guy that's played 3 full seasons, has missed less than 20 games in all 3 of those seasons with a WRC plus in the 130s. I mean, he's racked up 10 WAR in his first 3 full seasons, and he still has 3 more seasons of control left. Like, how big would the price tag have to be? Because the Rays aren't just going to dump this guy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be massive. You're talking about maybe an organization's, and this is speculative on my part, but perhaps their number one prospect, maybe their 2, 3. Obviously, depends on the strength of system, but this is a guy, and probably going to expect some major league talent in return. This is with control. This is a guy that where I think of the Mariners as a team. I know they've spoken, but they seem like the perfect match just because they have so much control of pitching, which is really what the Rays as an organization tend to value the highest. If you look, at their kind of past moves. So look, I think, it would take a king's ransom. I think people would even like understanding that. I think I maybe even, kind of be blown away by the kind of return they would get. But again, this is the kind of guy you do it for with team control. You can plug him anywhere in the order. You can lead him off, you get him third, you get wherever. And he's just a really good all around player. And you just plug him in left field and, not worry about it for 3 years.
Something I'll add to this is like what you've seen with the Rays is ideally they like to get at least 2 years ahead in terms of when they expect to be paid because they want to get, the most bang for their buck when they're trading this guy. And obviously when you have years of control, that's huge. Now, my guess, and this could, this is speculative, but my guess here is like their understanding is Randy Arozarena, when that time comes, is looking to get a massive payday. And whether they have or have not talked money with him, my speculative guess here is that they just don't think they will have the money to lock him up when that time comes. And so this could be kind of a, hey, we're dumping Glasnow. We're entering a semi-rebuild. Let's just stack the farm. Our window isn't going to be now. We're trading Glasnow. Now, maybe it is now. Maybe they hold on to Randy Arozarena. But if you do end up seeing them make that move, that could be some type of indication that they don't think their window to win a World Series is now, and they'd rather trade him when they know they won't be able to pay him, kind of stack up their farm and give it a go in 2-3 years. And so that's kind of my speculative guess, adding what Jack knows to really figure out why Tampa would trade such a valuable player with years of control left.
And look, I mean, you add to that, like the Rays are probably going to be losing, assuming Arozarena gets traded, which is not a guarantee, but if he does get traded, they're losing their core. They're losing Tyler Glasnow. You lost Wander Franco. God knows what's happening there. And you lose a guy like Arozarena, that, tells a fan base, which frankly is already not as interested. It obviously there's a lot of nuance regarding that, but it's not a good message as a contending team to send when you pretty much strip your entire core within half a season. Obviously, unfortunate circumstances with Franco and not the Rays' fault, but it's still, quite the precedent that the Rays have set, which is frankly, this is kind of not new at all. They do this pretty frequently. They'll flip their stars and they might get a good return. They may not. Obviously, you trust the Rays to get a good prospect return more than most teams. But, if you look at a Blake Snell type trade, they traded Blake Snell and they traded Jake Cronenworth, who was really productive for San Diego, and they got a bag of peanuts back. You know what I mean? Like they did not end up with too much. So I would say, before you say don't trade with the Rays, blah, 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 like, look at some of the trades. I mean, obviously some have been, massive home runs, but a few and enough, I would say, where it's noteworthy have been, nothing burgers for them and ultimately been, big losses.
That's a great point. Do we have anything else on the anything else to throw out before we finish in the world of baseball?
I'll add one thing in terms of trading with the Rays. And this is something, it's funny, when the Mets hired David Stearns, one of the questions that kind of I pitched around to people in the building was like, he's traded a lot with Tampa and he's had some big ones. They got the shortstop, like Willy Adames, right, from Tampa. And I think JP Fireeisen, and they got another arm back who ended up being a stud. Maybe, I don't know. Search up the deal. You could fill it in here. But essentially what I was told was David Stearns is not afraid to trade with Tampa. And so there are teams here that, feel they are confident in evaluating their players, evaluating others, and they're not scared to get kind of beaten up in a trade with Tampa, which is an interesting note. Other kind of generalized notes here. I know there's going to be some Mets fans that are tuning in. I've heard they're continually looking at outfield. I think defense is a priority here. That's something I've heard from the go. Like, I think they want to improve their defense. That was something they felt the club lacked. Two players I would look at. I would look at Michael A. Taylor. I would look at Harrison Bader. I think that the Kiermaiers of the world could make sense here. Ideally, I think they want someone who's going to be a starter. And a guy like Michael A. Taylor, who hit 21 home runs this past year, he's not the greatest starter ever, but he's got great defense. And, when you're comparing him to someone like maybe Harrison Bader, who you would be less inclined to play every day, he might have that leverage in terms of the negotiating. Like, they would rather have a Michael A. Taylor than a Harrison Bader. So those are two names to watch on the Mets front. But obviously, they're in on Yamamoto. I think that's priority number one. But that's kind of all I got in terms of emptying the notebook. Jack?
Yeah. One thing I will add is, on the West Coast, the San Francisco Giants, who just, inked Jung-Hoo Lee to a very big deal. I think that was good for them. They really needed something to kind of excite the fan base, get another big name in their lineup. But, they're really, kicking around the tires of the pitching market. I would expect them to pursue a starting pitcher. And a name I've heard floated around is Blake Snell. Now, I'm not really sure the level of interest that the Giants have with Snell, but I know, there is a level of interest. And, I would expect them to, again, peruse the starting pitching market. And again, Blake Snell is a name to watch. Now, I think Snell's timeline with his market, probably going to take a bit longer than the Yamamotos and the Montgomerys of the world. But definitely a name to watch for San Francisco would be Blake Snell.
I'll add one more. Bellinger. Coming into it, kind of tried to grasp his market. And I was told two teams from the go. I would watch the Yankees and I would watch the Giants. Well, they got other options. And so now kind of there's a lack of clarity as to kind of who is engaged here. One team I was told to watch, the Toronto Blue Jays. And his girlfriend posted on her Instagram story a picture in Toronto, which kind of caused the whole, like, what's going on. They're a team to watch here. I heard there is some level of interest. They want a left-handed bat, a power bat in the lineup. Bellinger would be that. Interesting enough, like some hard hit rate questions from this past season where he hit over 300. But I think there was some luck associated with that. If you look at his last few years on the Dodgers, not as great. So team to watch there, I would say Toronto. I would keep an eye there as we, his market kind of narrows down.
All right, boys, that's all for now. Thanks for watching the first episode of The Inside Scoop. Follow us on Twitter. Our tags are in the blue in our boxes. Michael Marino, Jack Azoulay-Haron, I'm Jake Sirkus saying so long. We'll see you next time.